Welcome back to At Your Expense Podcast. This is Kat and Trevor. Check us out on anchor.fm/atyourexpensepod. You can see us on any platform you stream your podcasts. Also search for At Your Expense Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We are back with Mirinda, a super organizer with Workers' World Party, the Texas death penalty abolition movement, and Fight for Immigrants and Refugees Everywhere, aka Fight ICE with Fire. They also co-edit the prison abolition section of the Workers' World newspaper titled Tear Down the Walls, which is free to read in the link in our description for this episode. This is part 2 of our amazing conversation with Mirinda about everything capital and resistance. Let's go.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by the you know the thing.
Let's talk about like the makeup of like the different work, the largest employers in Houston, the largest employers in Texas. I believe the largest employers in the state have to do with the medical industry, like University of Texas. Also, particularly in Houston, because we have the Texas Medical Center, which is the largest in the world.
Yep.
Wow.
So Houston will give you cancer and then try to cure it.
If you have money.
Yeah.
Right? Because even if you have insurance, I've seen those horror documents that people post. Like, my insurance denied me life-saving medical treatment because they didn't think it was like important enough. Like
After I've paid premiums for years and years and years, right?
Yeah.
That's why, GoFundMe is one of the largest insurers in the country at this point.
Precisely.
You better make your cancer really marketable so you can get some clicks and get some donations.
Wait, you're telling me people taking care of other people makes people healthy?
Whoa.
Weird.
Yeah.
We can all give a little to help a lot?
Yeah.
It's like maybe we should just make one big giant GoFundMe where we all pay a little bit of taxes
Whoa.
to
And
it,
everyone
and then
gets
everyone
to
can
be
go to the
healthy.
doctor. No.
You're onto something here.
Imagine that.
So Houston and Texas both have like a lot, like the highest employers have to do with like the medical industry.
Yeah.
Particularly the top 5 in the state. In Houston, not only is it like medical, like corporations and universities, Kroger, also one of the top, HEB, one of the top employers.
They're pharmacies?
Just like,
the grocery stores.
I mean, pharmacies
Overall.
are included. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, overall, HEB, Kroger, Shell, and Chevron, they have a lot of employees here in Houston. Also, there's another, United Airlines. They have a lot of employees here.
Yeah.
So, and Amazon's not in the top 10, but they're building warehouses everywhere. They're on the move. And just one more thing about Amazon that I just thought of and I wanted to say earlier. Not only does Amazon just have these like massive like warehouses and like they're physical where they're like selling product and shipping it to people. The majority of their business is through AWS, Amazon Web Services.
Yeah. Everything is run off Amazon Web Services.
Everything. It's insidious. It's everywhere. In fact, when Jeff Bezos started the company, he wanted to call it Relentless. And I think if you go to relentless.com, it still redirects to Amazon.
I'm going to check while you're talking.
Wow.
I mean,
That's crazy. Yeah, well, Amazon Web Services, that's
it does.
That's like an even bigger part of like how they've basically been pretty much integrated into every facet of like of our economy and like of American life, and like all these different industries basically rely on Amazon for either distribution or for web services. And I remember when like Jeff Bezos was like, I guess, touting giving some amount of money to climate change solutions or some bullshit, and it's like, you could literally just stop letting oil and gas companies like use Amazon technologies and like Amazon Web Services and stuff, and that would do like so much more. You could
stop providing artificial intelligence software to police and ICE because they are dealing with people who are fleeing their home countries because of U.S. foreign policy and also U.S. created climate disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, that's very true.
That's why people are fleeing here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The violence that the U.S. has created, as Malcolm X says, the chickens are coming home to roost.
Absolutely. And that's why, like, when people are talking about, like, using this rhetoric about people coming over here, like, oh, like, there's this, like, surge of migrant, all these people coming overboard and stuff. It's like, they literally, we've created the conditions there to where they have to leave.
Yeah, and I will never forgive the Associated Press for calling those caravans an army of migrants. They had to retract that, but they used that originally, and you can't undo that shit.
No.
Oh man, the caravan shit, when that was going on, that was just insane. Like the amount of
the fear-mongering.
Just fear-mongering and just racist, like, xenophobic bullshit to come out of, like, actual, like, supposedly, like, reputable places.
Associated Press, you would usually think like, okay.
You would think, but then again, like, places like the New York Times have manufactured consent for every war the U.S. has ever gone into.
Absolutely.
And still are for
and
anything.
Still are.
They still, and, like, like, basically any country that, that we're supposed to be, putting out a narrative of, like, oh, we should think a certain way about them to justify either sanctions or, like, our military actions there or whatever. Like, yeah, all of these, bigger publications, they go right along with it. Like, New York Times has been doing that forever. Like, yeah, they've manufactured consent for everything. And, Associated Press is no different. And I mean, and now their job is basically, again, it's like controlling the narrative, making it seem like things have changed at all with this new administration, and just, running cover for it at this point.
Speaking of things that have supposedly changed, right? Biden, in his executive orders when he first came in, he's like, goodbye private prisons. Well,
right.
Wow,
less than 9% of the incarcerated population is housed in private prisons. They're mostly state and federal run. And the executive order that he had, like, really doesn't do anything for anyone. And in fact, the most profitable sector of the private prison industry is migrant detention. And not only that, but when we're talking about, like, the money to be made off incarceration, it's not just, like, private prisons like Geo Group, Core Civic. It's contractors, like medical contractors, food contractors who work with the state, right? There are over, like, 4,400 companies across the country just making bank off the prison industrial complex, like Secures Technologies. Who do the video conferencing. They, like, visits mostly everywhere have been canceled except for Texas, because Texas fucking reopened. Governor Abbott, piece of shit, sorry. In Pennsylvania, I mean, the prisoners there have been on lockdown. I mean, again, they're, like, in their cells like 23 hours out of the day. And they're not really working, and they have no visits, right? No contact with the outside world. Not only have they tried to do this in Pennsylvania, where they've tried to take away, like, mail. They want to, like, mail things to a company, right? The company sends you a scanned picture because they're worried about drugs getting in, which, by the way, anything bad coming into a prison usually comes in through the guards. We all know that. Mm-hmm. They want to do things like that, and then just, like, there's no in-person visits, and they want to do away with in-person visits indefinitely because there's so much money to be made off video visitation. Mumia and other political prisoners have been raising that. When video visitation first started before the pandemic, they're like, they're going to use this. Just stop letting us see people in person. And they were right.
I have a link to that Protect Prison Mail campaign in our link tree for anyone listening. I'm going to add it to the description of this video too, but that is a very big thing going on right now. There's a petition that you can sign, and it's all to make that private company a lot of money. That's the only real reason that's happening. That petition is really well laid out and explains all the ways that their excuses for implementing this just don't make any sense.
So also just touching on what you're saying about Biden's, like, it being like a media stunt, because it came out, there was all this press circulating
the father of mass incarceration.
Yeah, the guy who wrote the 94 crime bill, who put more non-violent offenders in the prison system than anyone else. He's the architect of this. And now, he's getting all of this like positive media attention, being like this. He's gonna change the prison system. He's ending private prisons, and it's like you pointed out, private prisons are only like a piece of the problem, right? But also, the biggest for-profit, prisons are these detention centers. But then also, so it's like what he signed actually only ended Department of Justice contracts with private prisons, which is only a tiny fraction of private prisons, even.
So a small fraction of the small fraction of the problem.
Yes, and most of those contracts are through states. So it's like it's not even gonna affect much, anyways. But then
it affects like the however many people in federal prison.
Yeah.
He pretty much found like the slimiest way to do something and make it look good for headlines, but not really affect.
It's like
big
painting
change.
Black Lives Matter on the street while you're still murdering people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because now and what it was he went back to, it was something that happened under Obama administrations too. It just ended that tiny amount of contracts that the DOJ had with private prisons, and I guess that had been changed under the last administration, and now it's changed back. And now it's like, okay, so this one minor thing is like all that's going to go back and forth between whatever. So it's Democrats or Republicans. This is the difference. This very tiny, it doesn't change the problem at all, like you're saying. And like we were saying, Biden being the architect of the prison industrial complex as we know it, or what it's become since the 94 crime bill, which is just putting even more and more, low level like offenders, like non-violent offenders into this system.
Yeah. And I want to touch for a moment on violence. I would be remiss as an abolitionist if I didn't. One of the things that the state often uses, and I'm very attentive to this tactic, is they separate people into nonviolent and violent, right? Any division that we're making any deeper when we're talking about these things can be used against the folks inside. And so even if somebody is like a violent person, right? There's ways to deal with that violence that doesn't mean, like denying their humanity. Now, when we're talking about violence, like what is causing that violence? We can talk about the death penalty. That's a really great way to see some of the stark contradictions. We say we use the death penalty because it keeps us safe from the worst of the worst. Most of the people who end up on death row, first of all, the death penalty is racist and anti-poor in its usage, and it has been since its legal framework comes from lynch law in the South. Most of the people on death row are poor or mentally ill or have suffered severe childhood trauma. We saw a killing spree under the last several months under the Trump administration. The federal executions hadn't happened since 2000. It was in a while. I can't remember the exact number. But they killed 13 people under the Trump administration, and it hadn't been done in a while. And the people who died, there was a black man from Texas who was murdered. There was a woman named Lisa Montgomery. She had been trafficked, and since she was a young girl, and she did kill somebody. But the death penalty didn't make anything. It didn't change the conditions under which she was created. It didn't give anybody healing. And in fact, it gave people COVID. People who attended the execution got COVID. Lisa Montgomery was such a difficult case. She was trafficked. She experienced so much trauma. And she didn't even know why she was there, but she in her final moments, she was just strapped to a table for hours while they were deciding her shit at the Supreme Court. And the pro-life Supreme Court judge that they just added, Amy Coney Barrett, whatever, she voted to kill these people as they went through, because SCOTUS has final say on executions. Texas is the killing capital of the country. Texas has had more executions in the modern era than the next 6 states combined. We've killed 570 people since 1976. Virginia is in second place with 113, but they just abolished the death penalty, which is the first southern state, former Confederate state to do so. Wow. Which is a big deal. The death penalty is on the decline over the past 15 years. There's a lot more public support for abolishing the death penalty completely. But we still have it in Texas. The most recent Texas execution, there was one that happened during the pandemic. There was one that just got stayed, which means it can still happen again. But the date that was set for April 20th was now moved to September. The people on death row in Texas, like, many of them are innocent. Like Rodney Reed, innocent. I mean, we get it wrong so often, and yet still, like, you can't undo killing somebody. Not only that, but when we talk to people who are like experiencing lethal injection, like, the drugs have been botched, people say that it burns, like, it's not humane, and in fact, like, people witnessing, like, are traumatized, right? Family members have, like, gone mad, like, outside the death house in Huntsville. That's where they kill everybody in Texas. Like, that has not made us any safer from violence. It's not a deterrent. It's scientifically proven that the death penalty doesn't keep people from killing people. Mm-mm. The thing that really, cuts down on violence is providing people with health care, providing people with housing, providing people with the things that they need to live, and giving people the tools to, like, sort out conflicts with one another without, like, the police coming and escalating a situation even further. There's situations of domestic violence that I have seen in my life. When the police show up, shit gets worse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's insane that we even, like, have a framework that, like, accepts that as a solution or a proposed solution, and, like, that, like, so many people have bought into it for so long. That, like, the death penalty, I guess, is sold to them as this kind of, like, that's justice, eye for an eye kind of thing, which is, like, it's just, it seems like it should be so blatantly just, like, evil to think about the state murdering someone, and it should be hard for anybody to be okay with that. But then it's like, I feel like the way that it's been sold to people, and I guess all of, like, the narratives about policing, or, like, this, like, tough on crime mentality that we see from liberals too. Like, it's like famously Bill Clinton went and watched the execution of a mentally ill black man, and watched him be publicly executed during his campaign to show how tough on crime he was.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
And yeah,
it was accepted. It was lauded.
That's so gross.
Yeah.
We've discussed addressing the roots of violence, like adequate health care, for example. Can we talk a little bit about alternatives for addressing harm, like restorative justice or other solutions?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we have to get really creative.
For sure.
So restorative justice gets talked about often, and it's a little bit different from transformative justice. There's kind of two, those are two things. Both can be used as ends towards abolition, but they're not alternatives to the carceral system, because an alternative to the carceral system cannot be forced. But restorative justice, for example, will try to restore or repair conditions previously, and oftentimes restorative justice will work with, like, bodies of the state, like police. Transformative justice is not interested in working with the current state, and it also is concerned about transforming conditions so they don't happen. So say, for example, domestic violence situation. When I'm just gonna, like, for an example, this is a heterosexual couple, man and woman, the man is abusing the woman, right? Just
a familiar story.
All too familiar. What transformative justice seeks to do, it seeks to stop that harm from happening and to make sure it doesn't happen again. And the way that it does that is it it draws on community accountability. So it's not just the people who are experiencing the harm who are trying to, you know, fix things. The entire community, like you map out allies against the abuse, people who know the perpetrator of violence. I don't even like the word perpetrator of violence.
Yeah.
Like, there's a transformative justice term.
The person committing the harm, maybe.
Yes. The person harming. That's a good way to put it. Right. You talk to the person who is harming. You talk to their family. You talk to their friends. You like bring in their networks, and say if the person who experiences harm, the survivor of harm, right? I mean, you're talking to their networks too, and you're making sure that they're removed from the situation, and that there are like intermediaries that can like talk through and like where do we go from here, and addressing root causes like, oh, like you're unemployed, like, well, like maybe let's fix that, because prisons and jails and detention centers, they get touted as like, oh, these keep us safe from all the people who are doing crime. But first of all, the state is deciding what crime is, and the state has like perpetrated violence, like genocide, on stolen land, to this day, every day. Why are we giving them the moral authority to like?
Who are they to judge?
Who are they to judge? And then also, prisons haven't made us any safer. We wouldn't have the violence of like the epidemic of like sexual violence that we see today. Like if prisons worked, we wouldn't see those problems. But the fact is they entrench that violence. They perpetuate it. They just
make it worse than it would have been anyway.
Precisely.
You're telling me that massive over-policing doesn't stop crime?
Imagine
That's exactly
that.
what I'm telling you.
Whoa.
As a matter of fact.
Oh, fuck the police.
But I don't know. It seems like, you know, we have some good people in office right now, and you know they'll do the right thing. I mean, Kamala Harris has spent her whole life in the justice system. She should know how to fix it, right?
Prosecuting people
relentlessly.
Yeah.
No matter
putting
what.
Parents of children in jail if their child skipped class.
Yeah, jailing the mothers of truant children, because that's going to get them to go to school if their mom is like not able to provide them with what they need. Like that's not going to like do away with the root cause of why they were gone.
I'll never forget, she was like laughing, telling the story, like, and then this little girl came up to me and I said, that's right, if you don't go to school, your mommy's going to jail. You don't want that, do you? What the hell?
Yeah, see? She knows how it works.
Tough on crime. Tough on those little girls.
You threaten people. You know, you subject them to the worst things possible, and then that'll change.
That'll do it to them.
Yeah.
I'll shape them up.
More prosecutors and more courts are not going to save us.
They never have.
They never have. They never will.
Never will.
By design.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to hear more about all the wonderful organizations you're part of. We can start with Workers' World Party, if you'd like. Kind of, not their whole history. I'm assuming it's expansive, right? But maybe what they're up to right now, what they're all about in like a sentence or two.
Oh, that's tough.
Oh, that probably is tough. Okay, how would you like advertise it to someone who like is maybe you think might join?
I'm still working on my elevator pitch, to be quite frank. We do a lot because it's like connecting all of these struggles, these anti-capitalist struggles, together. I mean, if anything, it's about solidarity with different struggles and connecting, you know, anti-LGBTQ violence to imperialism, connecting imperialism to the climate crisis, and
which can be very easily connected.
Oh yeah,
the U.S. military being one of the, I think maybe the largest polluter in the world.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, just connecting these different struggles like militantly. It's like a Marxist-Leninist party, right? So like theory is pretty important, and like methodical organization important. The party's been around for decades, I believe. They've been all over, doing all sorts of things. Like
that's so cool.
One of my a comrade I've never met, but I still know because like what they did was so like transformative. Leslie Feinberg. She's written and organized around so many different things, particularly like she used to like do the prison pages for Workers' World newspaper, but they use Marxist theory and like the science of change to talk about the roots of oppression against LGBTQ people, and connect that to imperialism.
Cool. So it's kind of like maybe they're used to taking like a very tangible issue at hand and connecting it to this big like overarching theme globally is like the pattern I'm picking up, which I think is super cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. International solidarity is so important.
Yeah. I mean, so it's like more about like, you know, their focus is taking the struggles that people deal with here and kind of applying them to other oppressed people in different parts of the world.
You have siblings all over. You should all unite, right?
Yeah. Right. Cool. I mean, workers and oppressed people of the world unite. Same struggle, same fight. I mean, it's drawing on like Lenin and, you know, like workers, right? They have the power to overthrow capitalism, right? When workers are in solidarity with like oppressed peoples of any grouping, anybody who's like vulnerable to premature death, right? That's power. Mm-hmm. That's power. Like if we were to take the Black Lives Matter anti-racist uprise movement, right, and we were to merge it with the labor struggle, imagine. Right? I mean,
a general strike. Something like that. Like,
I mean, in India, millions of workers in India went on general strike.
Yeah.
The capitalists are shaking in their boots right now.
Right. Yeah.
That's why also the U.S. media is not covering a damn word of it.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't show very many images of it on U.S. media either because they wouldn't want to see the communist flags in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, anti-communism is going to get us all killed, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And there's a reason communists are so hated, because they will give people the tools they need to organize for their own liberation.
I mean, that's a huge threat that needs to be taken down.
Right? I mean, we talk about the DPRK, or people, as people call it, North Korea.
Yeah.
The DPRK has been in solidarity with anti-colonial struggles in Africa, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason people are like, oh, well, like, you know, like the terrible dictators starving its people. No, that's U.S. sanctions. Yeah. Sanctions are starving the DPRK.
It's crazy the amount of propaganda in this country put forth about other governments that maybe do things in a different way in terms of not
organizing their economic systems around human needs and not profit.
The goal being to smear them as like their system not working. Instead, we employ these other kinds of tactics like economic sanctions and try to cripple their economy, and then in the aftermath we can point to it and say, look, communism, socialism, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Look at Venezuela. And it's like, what has Venezuela been experiencing but crippling economic sanctions
and imperialism?
Yeah.
Precisely.
And now we have a brand new administration also touting the recognition of Juan Guaido as the interim president.
Noted piece of shit.
Yeah, CIA asset, went to school in the U.S.
All I have to say is that it's the CIA's flop era, and I love to see it.
Yeah, they're falling on their fucking faces a lot recently. Like people, it's easy to like figure out now. You're like, okay, yeah, that's something the intelligence community is trying to like put into the mainstream.
Yeah, like
it's getting more and more obvious.
Like the Uyghur genocide in China. They're like, oh, like the Chinese have concentration camps. You have concentration camps in your backyard. And in fact, there are concentration camps located on top of toxic military waste for children.
Oh yeah, what were you talking about with that?
Yeah, so there's two different places. One is in Homestead, Florida. It had been closed in the Trump administration in 2019 due to community organizing because the conditions were so bad. Not only is it on top of like toxic military waste, like 16 different types of contaminants that like are harmful to human beings. It's near an active military base where like the plane noise, they said, can like give you like PTSD and like trauma, and subjecting children to that. And the Biden administration, they're saying, you know, like, because of COVID, like we have to have these overflow detention facilities for migrant children. And so places like in Homestead, Florida, or in El Paso, Texas, they're also trying to reopen a detention facility for young boys, I believe, migrant boys, on top of toxic military waste. So they're poisoning them. They've ripped them from their parents. I mean, it's a concentration camp. We have that in our yard, and the U.S. is still China bashing, which that sort of imperialism, you know, has really, I'd say, fed into the anti-Asian violence that we're seeing around the country.
Absolutely,
Of course,
yes.
yeah, definitely. And people are like, oh, I wonder why people have these horrible ideas about Asian people and especially Chinese people. It's like, well, what's been perpetuated about China here? China has any kind of development, they do anything, we frame it as authoritarian or as
their response to COVID,
yeah.
the U.S. was like, the authoritarian government is really bad for its people, but they can keep their people alive and we fucking can't, so who's winning?
Yeah, basically like claiming that like, oh, it's like they're really like you know, denying people like privacy or like you know, rights, and with their like, you know, basically by doing what they're supposed to be doing and tracking COVID. And it's like, don't we already also have
They already track us in the
pockets?
same ways,
Yeah,
just for their own means,
exactly.
and not
Don't
for
we have-
protecting
don't
our
we have-
public health.
Yeah, we're tracked not by a state trying to control a virus, but by large corporations trying to profit off of our every decision and every like every action. So
Yeah, and specifically, I want to talk about the Uyghur, like the supposed Uyghur genocide happening in China. That's in an area that has a lot of oil, right? And if you follow the money, the National Endowment for Democracy, which is a CIA-backed group, is the one funding all of that.
you got Adrian Zenz, the one source on the conditions of the Uyghurs currently, being what? He's like a far right, like Christian fundamentalist. Yeah. I definitely I have had a lot of contentious conversations with people about that. It's very hard for people because you know, people don't want to be, they're like, I don't want to be denying a genocide or something, and it's like, you can say that you can't believe, you know, things that come out from the Chinese government or whatever, but like, are you really going to believe things from our media about another country, especially when we're seeing more and more of a new Cold War with China and Russia, and basically like these like new narratives popping up and like trying to like you know, revitalize like some of these like tensions, just because we're seeing them as like a, you know, a potential like economic competitor and like a threat on a global scale, because with the spread of global capitalism being like the, you know, the predominant like interest of like American foreign policy and everything, it's like China actually subverts that in a lot of ways by having relationships with developing countries and countries that have not subscribed to or really like completely become engaged in our economic system. So
Right, like when we look at Bolivia, like before the coup took place, like they had made a deal with the Chinese to nationalize their lithium, to nationalize their natural resources, right? And they were getting like the majority cut of it for themselves, and they were partnering with China, right? But the capitalists and like Elon Musk, they launched a coup so that couldn't happen, so that the capitalists could take the resources from Bolivia and sell it back to people in like in the free market.
yeah. in the free market that is so free that Elon's parents ran a fucking emerald mine in apartheid South
Free
Africa.
for Elon market.
Right, all that apartheid money, and he still couldn't buy himself, you know,
A personality.
a hairline. I don't know.
Oh, damn.
Damn.
Get him.
We should have an entire Elon episode and have
Roast
and have
session.
you back on just to go
A roast,
all in
yeah.
on like Elon and his fucking doings.
We'll read his
especially-
back tweets for 24 hours.
Oh
and
my
just
God,
get
we
really
can-
into it.
I would even go so far as to look back at Azealia Banks' archives.
Oh,
That
yeah.
would be need some popcorn.
I think we should actually do that.
No, I really do think so. I think it'd be
I
really
think it'd
fun.
be really funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be fun and it'd be funny, but it'd also be like interesting because like people probably don't really know like
What
like,
he's doing in Texas?
like he's trying to build
SpaceX.
like there. He's trying to do it there.
And they
I was
tried
like,
to launch
wait,
something
what?
recently and exploded, and they
That was
fucking
so funny.
They tore up the beaches there. The beautiful, lovely like habitat for like humans and non-humans.
But you just don't understand. This is all in the advancement of humanity. Like he's gonna make sure that what did he say? We have a multi-planetary existence, and that we live. He's gonna make all that possible. Aren't you excited to be?
I wish you could hear eyes roll.
Aren't you excited to be in debt on Mars?
Look, the only people making it to Mars.
Aren't you excited to be a slave on a Mars colony?
Thank me for this.
The working conditions there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna make it possible. Let's go.
For Epstein's Island, not for you or I. Like,
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like anybody thinking that these pursuits of like a private space exploration company are gonna result in anything that would benefit everyone is just
Why
so
do that? Why
dumb.
would they
It's like
invest and spend all that money
Yeah.
to go somewhere to benefit anyone but the company
This is like-
itself? That
I
makes
mean,
no sense.
it's like absolutely for this class
whatever
of
they
people.
find or do is going to be
Yeah.
to their benefit, and they're going to capitalize on that.
It's
I'm
an
just
escape
thinking,
route
like-
for them. It is for that class of people.
Truly,
It's an
yeah.
escape route.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna try the whole thing about capitalism, like expand or die. There's only so much you can expand on a planet with finite resources, right? I mean, so escape route, I mean, is probably on their agenda.
Yeah, exponential
I
growth.
mean, I also think he's just playing.
Exponential
too.
growth. It can never stop. More profit for shareholders every year. Don't you understand? That's
Can we
all
make
that
a
matters.
hashtag colonize the moon?
I mean, I feel like that might be a thing.
It needs to.
Could-
He's
Gary,
basically
Gary
talking
Johnson,
about it.
libertarian. I mean, I remember they're like, when he was running for president in 2016, Mr. Johnson, how are you going to face the climate crisis? What is your response solution? He's like, oh, we could just colonize the moon. That is classic libertarian avoidance.
Literally.
Avoidance,
I mean, no,
yeah.
and more of that, like you're saying, like libertarian avoidance has exhibited itself in these like kind of like really ridiculous, like wonky climate change solutions, like talking about like, oh, we'll just like Elon Musk, he's like, I'm just gonna give money to whoever can just pull carbon out of the air. Like, just invent a way to do that, and we'll focus on that.
We'll just
It's
we'll count on businesses to do the right thing, which makes me think of like, I mean, that's basically what they've done with like landlords. We'll just count on landlords to do the right thing. In Houston, that's what the mayor has basically said. But Houston and Galveston, Harris County and Galveston County have seen some of the highest like rates of eviction in the country. Not even just rates, but pure like numbers. I think we're behind New York and somewhere in New Mexico. Albuquerque?
New Mexico, huh? That's wild compared to like New York and Houston.
New York, I think, has the most, but that's New York. I think
Right.
that last time I checked, Houston was like third or fourth. Houston and Galveston together combined, they've had over 30,000 evictions since the beginning of the pandemic.
30,000 households forcibly removed from their homes.
And then many more have like self-evicted.
So that's not counted in that original number.
Right.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right. And then what people are facing with landlords, like in the aftermath of the freeze with like repairs. I mean, it's sick. It's sick.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, this is only going to be a bigger and bigger issue as this goes on, as our dwindling response to the pandemic comes to a halt, and we're not doing even the bare minimum with moratoriums expiring.
Yeah, and I mean, like, when people don't have a place to go, they're more subject to premature death, right? Vulnerable to premature death with COVID.
Violence also, I would assume, right?
Violence also, not only just from people in the streets, but police. They've been doing homeless sweeps nonstop. And where are people supposed to go if they can't exist outside? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Again, they want to warehouse people in prisons.
Yeah,
that's it.
I mean,
we've
we've completely criminalized, being houseless and existing literally anywhere. Like,
yes.
You're not allowed.
Your body is not allowed to be in a place that's not a jail cell at this point.
Especially in Houston. I feel like in Houston, like, you can't even like have a tent anywhere. You can't. They'll tear down all your shit. We know because of being out there. When we
have like raised funds and like donations and organized to go bring people things in winter, and like the next week cops will come by and just throw it all in these big trash compactor trucks right in front of them.
In the name of quote unquote public safety.
What the hell?
Yeah. We are paying more money to like police and prisons. There is an organization that tracks how much we spend on the county jail per week. And like on average over the past like couple of months, we've been spending, I think it's like $2.3 million a week on incarcerating people pre-trial at the Harris County Jail, which is more than double than what we spend on pollution control, the public library, and public health services combined in a week. For those three things that I just listed, public health, public libraries, and pollution control, which we need.
Desperately in Houston.
Right. On a weekly basis, the county spends $1.3 million for those three things, as compared to, I think it's $1.2 million, as compared to the $2.3 million that we spend each week on illegally detaining people pre-trial. Yeah. That's where our money is going.
Taxpayers, not businesses. Us using our money so that ultimately those who profit from the carceral system make more money.
Right, like bail bonds people. Oh my gosh, in Commissioner's Court the other week, one of the Republican commissioners, he brought forth like a resolution. He's really worried about crime. He's like, oh, the crime's going up. And he kept trying to blame it on the bail reform, the misdemeanor bail reform that happened on the county level like a couple years ago. And the county judge stopped him and read him for filth. She's like, I know we have the same data. This is a trend happening nationally and has no correlation to the bail reform that's happened here. It was really great that she just like laid into him because he deserved it.
Good.
That's ridiculous. Bail reform is something that desperately needs to happen because
abolish bail. Abolish prison.
Bail is just obviously I'm with you on all that, but like
the way there,
I'm like
that bail.
But like bail is such an exploitative like thing. Like,
money has nothing to do with whether a person's going to commit a crime or not.
Exactly.
It does not.
And what is putting that money up due to someone's family and anybody else in a situation where they have to do that to like, and then like it's just another racket. But at the same time, like you're saying, it's like to think that like money or having a certain amount of money is gonna make sure that someone's not a repeat offender is
right. And when we talk about repeat offenders, like they call it recidivism, right?
Recidivism, yeah.
When I look at like recidivism rates, I don't look at that as like an individual moral failure or an individual failure. Yeah. That's the failure rate of the state.
Absolutely. Yeah. They are not supported once they leave on purpose so that they have more chance to go back.
No, and it's even worse during the pandemic. There was this guy who was released and he needed like psychotropic medication. Mind you, like a really large percentage of the Harris County downtown jail people need like psychotropic medications.
For sure, yeah.
He wasn't given any of that upon his release, and he was sent to a halfway house, and because he didn't have his medication, he ended up having to go to a hospital. And like both his parole officer, piece of shit, and the halfway house, they're just not taking care of this man. And then like when his like the time is up at the halfway house, they put him out with no money, no phone, what are people supposed to do? I mean, they want those people to die.
Or come back so they can profit off of their bodies and their labor.
If they come back.
If they come back.
Alive.
Yeah. I mean, we were just saying you're not allowed to exist anywhere.
I know, and even the public libraries are closed right now. And I've always loved public libraries because, one, books saved my life. And then public libraries are one of the few places where you could be, somewhere without having to pay.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You can exist for at least a short period of time, right?
I've heard, someone say, more recently, if public libraries were proposed as a thing today, you know how much pushback there would be about that?
Socialism.
That's so true.
Yeah. Socialism. Yeah, that's horrible.
When people are socialism, can you tell me what that is? You want to explain to me really quick? Because you're probably just going to describe capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to describe the conditions of capitalism and unironically attribute it
and
to
all the bad things of capitalism at that,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And attribute it to what you think is socialism or what you've been told is. It's just, it's very funny. I mean, I guess that's a good question too. Is what do you think is in store for the future of the American public and their ideas about socialism as opposed to the capitalism that so many people are suffering under right now? Do you think that there's a shifting opinion in that?
Oh yeah.
And how do you see that?
Look at the youth.
Yeah, and how do you see that establishing itself in any kind of way that can actually challenge power? How do you see that this kind of new consideration of socialist ideas? How do you see that influencing what people can do to organize and different stuff like that?
Somebody asked me something very similar to that, and I really had to think about it. For me, what I've seen in organizing and how I see my role in particular, I think, with the anti-racist uprising and just the awareness people have about the criminal injustice system in this part of the world, I think one of the ways to build socialism is through building the movement for police abolition and prison abolition. I think that's a huge part of it. I think also, we have to get creative. It's a really big question, and I think there's a lot of different answers. And I think some of those answers would be to be networking tenants unions with workers' assemblies and unions and debt strike collectives. We need to get creative. We need to be linking all sorts of struggle together.
Yeah.
And that's it, is fighting where you are, fighting your oppression where you are with other people, and then linking that together. That's how we build socialism. We're up against a lot, but I have hope because despair, that's a form of certainty. I'm not certain of shit. Things are constantly changing, and that's one of the basic tenets of Marxism, is that things are in constant flux, right? And that's good because material conditions shape what happens, right? If you put a rubber band around a watermelon and you keep putting more rubber bands around a watermelon, right? That pressure is going to build up and it's going to snap the watermelon. We see the conditions of capitalism crushing people every day in every way. At some point, something's got to give. There's going to be a material reaction, and we have to make sure that we are organizing before we get to that point so that our networks can move in unison. And that's how we build power. That's how we network. That's how we win.
Hell yeah.
That was incredible.
Yes.
How good.
That could not have been put any better. And especially since earlier you're talking about solidarity internationally with other socialist movements, and we've seen a good amount of those recently. And
campaigns around against sanctions. You go to sanctionskill.org. Mm-hmm. International organizing around that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And the more we move in solidarity with the most oppressed, as Fannie Lou Hamer says, nobody's free until everyone's free.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we want to mention at all the FIRE group, the Fight for Immigrants and Refugees Everywhere?
I know we're hoping to organize different caravans during the crisis, particularly around the detention centers.
Cool, that's good.
And also just talking about just like creating media and art, kind of dispelling the myths about migrants and talking about the root causes of migration. I know I'm working on a zine right now with my comrade Tanya in Dallas about the migrant struggle, and we're going to be putting it out as FIRE. So I'm really hopeful, because when we fight for migrants, when we make sure that they're not being exploited, when we make sure that their needs are met, like that helps us too. Like,
right, yeah.
I know FIRE is hoping to work in coalition with other groups as well, like building like left unity, moving in unison.
I love that idea of doing more of the creative art stuff and kind of changing the narrative through that venue. I think that's really good, something we could use a lot more of.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of youth energy, and I think we need to harness that, because again, like we have a lot of, propaganda to undo, a lot of like anti-communist propaganda, a lot of anti-migrant propaganda. We've had every president is a racist war criminal.
Every president.
And you're like, Mirinda, how could you say they're all racist? The policies that they enact.
But one of them's black.
One of the things I hope we've learned from like colonialism at this point is that they will use a colored face.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah.
To beat us. Mm-hmm. That's what's gonna happen. Like with the new police chief, Acevedo's out, right? I heard that he couldn't run for mayor or something here, or like somebody else is gonna try to run. I don't know about all that.
I sworn that guy was gonna run
and
for
he
mayor.
probably was, but there was some kind of technicality is what I'm hearing, that he couldn't, right? Or there was some reason.
Just like the political climate wasn't right for him to do it in Houston. So
oh yeah. No.
Now
he has a lot to answer for. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Now he never have to.
I watched him like hop in the like march with us and like try to take pictures with people, and then I also watched him give orders to like tear gas us. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. Thanks, Acevedo.
Yeah, but you're right though. Like, and I feel like liberals will always try to use like the representation stuff against
breaking the glass ceiling so the shards can rain all over oppressed people.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, definitely.
I think I heard that around the time Hillary Clinton was running for president.
Oh, that's apt.
Her State Department is responsible for the coup in Honduras that overthrew democratically elected government for the people.
Libya. Initially, Syria. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, it's fuck the Clintons forever.
Absolutely.
Right. I don't think a Hillary Clinton presidency would have been any better than Trump presidency.
No,
I think we're seeing that right now under Biden. Yeah. It doesn't matter, and if anything, the Democrats might be better at manufacturing consent for a lot of these things.
Yeah,
they really kind of are. Like, especially for foreign policy stuff.
Maybe they're even more dangerous.
Yeah, in some ways, because it's like it's so overt under Republicans, and like we see it for what it is. Especially with Trump, we saw things for what they were. The mask was off, but like it's like now it's like people want to just put it right back on.
So maybe each party has their own strengths in terms of being the most evil thing in existence, right?
Well, I saw a really good chart talking about the whole it's harm mitigation. It's harm mitigation for who? Not the global South. Whenever we're voting for a Democrat, but specifically the chart was like what happens when you vote for like the lesser of two evils. Each time that you vote for the lesser of two evils, you're still moving farther and farther closer to evil.
Yeah. And then one of them just keeps getting more and more evil, so you have to vote for the other one.
Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, remember him? I can't stop thinking about him. Even when you say his name out loud. Okay,
I did not know his middle name.
So, did you know that Ronald Reagan was alive? He was born when Harriet Tubman was still alive.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, that's crazy to think
crazy.
about.
Yeah, that's really crazy to think about.
So a lot of like these older politicians that are in office right now, I mean, they were alive when segregation was like really, really intense and rough.
Yeah, Joe Biden knows that. Some of his best friends in Congress are pro-segregation.
Exactly. I mean, still.
Yeah.
Biden's pro-segregation. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, Republican Joe.
But yeah, no, I feel like I've always, like, I don't know, more and more kind of felt like that. Like, the Democrats in some ways are more dangerous because of the narratives they're able to build about, like,
they're able to co-opt a lot of radical language and movement. It's tough, like, especially like the language keeps changing around like migrants as far as like how we're caging them. Yeah. They will co-opt like social justice language and use it to talk about insidious state violence. Though at the same time, well, I think that is more dangerous because people aren't looking as closely. At the same time, after what we've gone through in the last like 5 years, people are not fucking falling for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think more and more people are reaching that point. Yeah,
I think we have to agitate too. I think that's part of our job is to make sure that we're spreading, the truth and talking, counteracting the terrible narratives that we're hearing. I feel like
everyone go get a podcast right now. That's the only way.
I'll counteract the narratives at once.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should just turn all of the left into one giant podcast. Just have everyone.
That's the true answer to Electoral College. One united podcast.
But I do think that even left media has become like a bigger thing, and it's become, a more kind of, widespread thing for people to listen to, channels of like leftists with like views more similar to your own than like anything that would come out of like the media is not going to do it. Yeah, like the left media, which is liberal media, which is capitalist media, which is corporate media. Yeah,
exactly. You're right on the money there.
Oof, that was
Literally.
a good one.
I didn't even mean to, but
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you a hot take here. I think instead of just like blanket calling, like, we need unity, I think we need solidarity.
Yeah.
I think unity can easily be co-opted, and it doesn't necessarily recognize like people's differences. Yeah. And we do have differences in how we're seen by the world, how we're treated,
how we experience the world, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Materially, like straight up, it's reality. Solidarity, I think, that can spawn new cells, right? And like different clusters can get like, I want to see more of that.
Okay, I like that. I can get behind that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, yeah, unity is something that can be. It seems even more, just like a milquetoast, like almost like a neoliberal like.
Biden calls for unity.
Yeah,
we need unity. We need. That's almost like these calls.
We need
like
to come together.
Civility. It's like it's almost more like we need people to tolerate things and understand and just be accepting of things, not that we need to like literally identify with other people's struggles,
right? Or
like have empathy in that way and see ourselves in someone else in someone else's fight against oppression. No, it's like we just need to have unity. We need to all be unite as Americans or whatever. Yeah, very different.
Yeah,
it just reminded me of a quote that I want to read. It has a lot to do with like solidarity. It's from this guy named Fred Moten. He says, "Yeah, well, the ones who happily claim and embrace their own sense of themselves as privileged ain't my primary concern. I don't worry about them first. But I would love it if they got to the point where they had the capacity to worry about themselves, because then maybe we could talk. That's like that Fred Hampton shit. He'd be like, white power to white people, black power to black people. What I think he meant is, look, the problematic of coalition is that coalition isn't something that emerges so that you can come help me, a maneuver that always gets traced back to your own interests. The coalition emerges out of your recognition that it's fucked up for you in the same way that we've already recognized it's fucked up for us. I don't need your help. I just need you to recognize that this shit is killing you too, however much more softly, you stupid motherfucker." You know?
Damn.
That's dope.
I love that. That is really awesome.
I'm gonna ask you for that quote later.
Yeah, I'll send it to you right now.
Yeah, thanks. That's great.
Damn, that is really awesome. But yeah, no, exactly. It's the only way for people to come to terms with how horrific like the conditions are for people in our system is to kind of appeal to that. Like, this isn't just bad for people experiencing the worst ends of this. Like, it's actually bad for fucking everybody.
For everybody.
It makes you worse that there are this many people incarcerated. Like, it makes you worse off that, like, your neighbor can't go to the doctor. Like, all of that makes you worse too. Like, it affects all of us in our relationships with other people and in the communities we can live in.
The climate especially.
And the climate especially.
Right, like the climate is coming for all of us.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I think that that you can build solidarity with in that way, because that's not something that is that's not, yeah, you're right. That's not something it's for everyone. Everyone is going to deal with that in the same way, whether it's like, and whether you're in a safer place, we're going to deal with it in terms of like people migrating because of climate disaster all over the world. So
I think about like mass migration, like we see it like right before a hurricane, right? Like during COVID, we had like a really, really explosive hurricane season. I mean, and like you get a couple days notice, like people leave, right? And then during COVID, it's a whole nother level. But specifically after Hurricane Laura, there was a man from Port Arthur, and he was talking about how like not only is this like a respiratory crisis of COVID, like before like a hurricane happens in an area, like refineries will like run overtime, and so there's extra pollution in the air and people are dealing with that. No heat or like no air conditioning because it's hot outside usually at that time of year. Just like these compounding crises. Some people like the most depressed are going to feel it first, right? But that is coming for everyone.
Yeah.
If you don't fight like that's your life, it will come for you.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely we see that with climate change. Like, this is just, it's one of those things. I feel like, and it's a way to build international solidarity, I think. We're all seeing like this system of global capitalism basically, reap these consequences of our exploitation of the earth and our usage of these like harmful chemicals. And like, it's like, really seeing that and like for everyone to take it in and be like, okay, well, this is not something that's going to affect only us here. It's going to affect everyone. So it's like literally something that like all people have to be able to unite around. It's
wild too, because like we were talking about earlier, like the ruling class, the rich, they have their escape plan. They're going to go colonize a different planet. But what you said earlier too, you were like talking about how like mass incarceration hurts all of us. I remember I was visiting an old prison activist named Johnny Martinez in hospice, and he had this picture on his wall of a banner drop they did in San Antonio when the American Corrections Association, before it became CoreCivic, had its conference in San Antonio, and they did a banner drop across the street from the center. And the banner said, I'm pretty sure it was like, their prisons, their profits, we all paid, 2 million is too many, stop the ACA. And then the ACA, like on the ends of the A's, they had like devil horns. It was so good. Nice. There's so much resistance that we can look back to. I mean, that's the narrative that I would like to see more, is like past resistance, because we have so much to learn, and we adapt what we know from those like past instances and adapt them to our material conditions. I mean, that's Marxism. That's the science of change. I mean, if we were to systematically look at like all the employers in the area, and we were to look at the different areas of struggle we'd want to link up, whether it's like workers' assemblies, tenants unions, debt strike collectives, like if we like systematically like plotted out our points.
Just saying.
I have a dream.
And it's a beautiful one.
Well, I think it's all going to become possible because Joe Biden released a video saying he likes unions. So
That was kind of wild.
He was forced to do that because of all the wonderful solidarity that we showed.
yes, he was.
Okay,
And-
that makes more sense, to be honest.
Every concession is won through struggle.
yeah, and again, it's the kind of concession that Democrats make.
Right.
Strictly symbolic and rhetorical concession.
Yeah.
Not anyone that actually means,
You
know,
notice
materially things are changing.
He didn't say he's going to do anything per se.
Exactly.
Right.
But like, yeah, that's a good thing over there.
I mean, Trump would never have said that.
Yeah,
Oh,
even
yeah.
being coerced or pressured by anyone, you're right, he wouldn't have.
I think it shows that the ruling class was like,
Well, damn.
the fact that they even let him become president means that they were desperate, because capitalism has to keep saving itself from capitalism. I mean,
Yeah.
capitalism creates, like, it's expand or die, and if it's not expanding, crisis. That's what happened. We got the recession of 2008, the crash and recession. I mean, that's what happened when the stock market crashed, like in the era of the Great Depression, 29, I think. When capitalism isn't expanding, crisis. And that's what the Democrats and Republicans can offer us, is like solutions to save capitalism
Yeah.
from capitalism
Exactly.
Temporarily.
temporarily, because
Yeah.
like there will be a point,
They've consumed everything around them, right?
right?
They're going to have to...
And then like and like, you know, when they see they obviously see more crises like oncoming, and like they're like, well, let's let this guy be president. This guy we'll pretend that just he's the crisis, and that like once we're done, once
Yeah, that's
he's not
kinda funny.
president, we can actually pretend that like just that was the crisis. And
Yeah.
like now it's been, you know, now we've accomplished our goal of restoring the soul of America.
Typical liberalism, pinning things on an individual, and also restoring America sounds a lot like Make America Great Again. Great
Right?
for who?
Sure does.
Restoring what?
Exactly.
Not to
Slavery?
its original owners, that's for sure.
I have my last hot take for the evening.
Okay.
Come the revolution, right? People often talk about, oh, we're gonna like behead the billionaires. Well, I don't know that beheading is like the route to go. Particularly, right?
I did get really excited when someone built a guillotine in front of Bezos' house at a protest, though. It was pretty
Yeah, or like Puerto Ricans like consistently bring a guillotine to the governor, because
Oh,
like
yeah.
it should not be a state. Like, free Puerto Rico.
cool. Yeah, absolutely.
The hot take is this, right? Come the revolution, right? Beyonce, her wealth not safe, right? But she will be. She's a cultural treasure.
Yeah.
One of the greatest performers of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
Will her wealth be safe? No. We will expropriate it to the masses.
yeah.
But she can keep her head, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my hot take.
I guess. I don't know.
I think Beyonce would be happy to hear that. but like again, it's like it's the kind of like cultural aspect of it, and like this like representation aspect of it is like, if we put a new like face on, you know, on capitalism and the same structures that are in place, but make them kind of more suitable to a population that's growing and like its discontent for the system, but just kind of repackage it and sell it to them almost as like
Sell it back to them.
yeah, as like, oh, actually, like, you know, you're right, like things are fucked up, and like, you know, like what we got to do is we got to get, you know, more people from either our same communities or who share the same like views, at least relatively, into these positions of power, where they can basically do the exact same thing and go along with the bidding of, you know, of the system as it is.
That makes me think of two examples in particular. One, right? One of the, I think, first bisexual representatives or whatever.
Kirsten Sinema.
Yeah, she voted no against the federal minimum wage with a curtsy and a thumbs down.
And a
Hell
chocolate
yeah.
cake. She brought cake that
She
day.
did. She did.
She did bring cake.
Let them eat cake.
So bisexual representation, what has that gotten us? Garbage. Another example of what representation. When we think about like, oh, like we should let transgender people serve in the military. Who is that serving?
Yeah. Like, wouldn't it be like, if you really care about trans people, wouldn't you want them to not
Die?
not be in the military?
They're trying to kill them all
I don't
off.
want anyone to be in the military.
Right. I mean, like trans people end up, the ones that do end up in the military go because like they are denied healthcare and benefits like in other places, right?
Yeah.
When you give people like few options to like survive and live, I mean, what's gonna happen? The U.S. military needs to be abolished. It is the biggest
waste of everything.
We've turned the military into our only jobs program.
Like with absolutely like no workers' rights whatsoever.
Speaking of jobs programs, Mumia, he talks about the 94 crime bill as a jobs program for white workers, like in rural areas. Ooh. He said that created, I mean, like a lot of prisons, especially in Texas, like all over, but Texas is a good example. Yeah. They get built in these rural towns. Palestine, Texas, I mean, it's spelled like Palestine, they call it Palestine.
Yeah.
Has 5 prisons and not something.
It can't be that big.
No, I mean, that is like the industry in that town.
That's insane.
And COVID was spread to the entire town because of like those prisons are incubators, and the guards would like bring the thing in, bring COVID in, and then take it home and spread it. And it was actually a really, really big problem. But when Mumia was talking about, you know, being like a jobs program, the 94 crime bill, right? Like it created this need to create more prisons, to have more prison guards. It gave jobs to white workers, and I that conception is, he's got so many wonderful,
is crazy,
that's good,
wonderful.
Never thought about that.
He's such a powerful thinker. I mean, he's had decades in prison just to read and think, and he's like at the center of it, you know. Free Mumia. The FOP, the Fraternal Order Police, have a vendetta against him because he understands the state, he understands it for what it is. He has 3 books out called Murder Incorporated. There's 3 volumes, and he talks a lot about imperialism. He's an incredible human being. I know we just did a webinar recently on Mumia, and we had Larry Holmes speak, who's one of our comrades in Workers' World. Him and Monica Moorhead did one of the last in-person interviews of him on film back in the 90s. Where he's talking about the prison industrial complex like decades ago, before people started using the term. We also had Dr. Joanna Fernandez, who is one of the organizers in the Mobilization for Mumia Coalition. There's a lot of, like, it's a huge coalition of people putting on like the weekend coming up, and then that webinar in Mumia. We also had Betsy Piet, who's a big organizer of that. Lots of great stuff. And the Jamal Journal. I'll have to bring you guys a newspaper. No, I should have brought some.
Yeah, definitely. Next time, bring us. Were you saying some of the paper that you write for?
Oh yeah, I have some old issues in my trunk, but I need to bring you some new issues.
Yeah,
nice.
Heck yeah.
My article on the migrant detention facility opening and the toxin dumping in Florida is in the print issue from last month. And I'll have to bring you that. I lay out the prison pages, so like even when I'm not like writing, like labor of love.
So where can people find your writing?
Workers.org.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
And what section? Like where would they like?
There is a section on prisons.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't even need to necessarily like point to my writing, but there's so many.
But we want you to.
So many different wonderful comrades writing. I write on, there's the different sections of the world and different like topics. I specifically write about the climate, about migrants, and refugees and prisons.
Is this a monthly publication or weekly or?
So it's been a weekly print publication since I think 1959.
Whoa.
Though during COVID we had to suspend the print edition temporarily, like for safety of the people who put it together. And now we're doing it on a monthly basis right now. We also provide free subscriptions to any incarcerated worker who asks for one.
Cool. That's awesome.
If you go to patreon.com/WWP, I think, I gotta double check that.
That's all right.
But that's how we provide free subscriptions to prisoners.
That's awesome.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. It's wild because I've met people who have like been in Texas prison decades and they've come out and they're like, yeah, oh my God, like Workers' World. Like, I know you write for
That's awesome.
That's
like,
really cool.
It's a huge, to me, it's a huge compliment that people are like, yeah,
Yeah.
I know Workers' World.
It's gotta feel
That's
great.
amazing. Yeah. You know, you've been really involved in kind of the efforts to organize against the death penalty in Texas, and kind of like what have been some of the biggest obstacles there, and do you see any I mean, do you see an opportunity for the death penalty to be abolished in Texas anytime soon, and like, you know, how does that work going?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, anything comes through struggle. So hopefully if we do our jobs right, we organize ourselves out of a job. There's a couple bills in the Texas legislature proposed by some of the same folks who like put them up every year. They haven't had committee hearings yet. A lot of focus is on like legislative, but there's like other ways to pressure like the state. You can make the drugs to kill people harder to get. One of the things that we were doing, we were protesting. There's a pharmacy in Bel Air, not too far from here, that was it was the compounding pharmacy that the state was getting its execution drugs for a while. So we went and protested, disrupted their business. And in fact, there was a laboratory here in Houston that tested the drugs for the federal executions. We protested there. We had like wanted for murder, like flyers, and we were passing them out. One of the people who worked there at Eagle Analytical, who was testing the drugs for the federal executions, we were right in front of their like employee work gate at this like massive building. And this guy, this white guy in this massive white truck, we told him why we were out there, because he's like, yeah, you're in my way. We're like, well, I think we should abolish the death penalty. And he's like, I think we should fry him. Like, I mean, there's still like exists that like that really fucked up like.
And I feel like that sentiment has kind of been like given to people through this almost like anger and frustration that they have towards their own lives, and like in the system in general, and like how they feel about their place within it, and like them thinking about the fact that like other people have done something so wrong they need to die almost like justifies them in some way, or makes them feel a little bit better that they're like, well, some people are just like irredeemable and bad, and at least I'm not one of them, or something.
Yeah.
You know?
That has a lot of Christian undertones, if I'm being real.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not one of those like terrible people. Definitely a part of it. The Texas death penalty abolition movement has been around since, I believe, the early 90s. They've been organizing for a long time. They walked from Huntsville to Austin previously when they were trying to free Clarence Brantley, who was a black man who was a janitor at Conroe High School. He was framed for the murder of a volleyball girl, and he didn't do it. It was two other janitors who did it, two white janitors. And the Montgomery County DA, he was like, oh, well, you're like the N-word, like you're going to hang for this. I mean, they, like the Texas death penalty abolition movement helped organize for his freedom. He was on death row for over 10 years, but they were able to get him out because he was falsely accused. One of the demonstrations they had at the Conroe courthouse, I believe in the late 80s, early 90s, the Klan rode up on them in the middle of the night. They had an overnight out in front of the courthouse. But solidarity is more powerful than the Klan, I'll tell you that. So there's been little wins along the way, and the people who have been organizing the longest, like Gloria Ruback, when she tells you about how people used to respond, there's like when they would do demonstrations, like in the past, there would be a lot more people who are like, fry them all, like I'll shock them myself or whatever. People would say those things. She says like that's less and less frequent now. Like she's seen like a big change in public opinion. And if you look at just like different polls done across the country, like people are moving more towards abolition. It's abolition of the death penalty in our lifetime, no doubt. I believe that
for sure.
And I don't think it's that far away.
No.
again, Virginia just abolished the death
Oh,
penalty,
yeah.
which like
That's so
Fucking
fucking cool.
awesome.
That's really awesome.
Good.
yeah,
I'm excited.
yeah.
And you know, like you were saying before, like what is the alternative to being hopeful? You know what I mean? We can only like
They want you
hope-
to not be hopeful,
yeah.
right?
We can
And so,
only-
if anything, you can take pleasure, if you will, in just spiting them.
Yeah. And I just think of like all the abolitionists who have come before us who like refused like slavery and refused what they said no to all sorts of different things. Like they came before us. Like I think of like John Brown, you know, like
yeah.
fuck yeah, John Brown.
Oh yeah. He did nothing wrong.
No,
Ever.
nothing
Ever.
wrong. And I'd do it again.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we just need another John Brown.
Yeah.
If anybody's listening to this and feels like they might be the next John Brown, just contact us.
Tweet
and,
us.
and we'll figure out how to. We'll set up like a GoFundMe for arms and
John Brown too. Bibles,
we'll
horses.
Abolition in our lifetimes, right? The demands that people are making, $15 an hour, that's not enough. It's land back. It's reparations.
Yeah.
It's not affordable housing. It's free housing.
Yeah.
I
Like-
like that.
And honestly, unless that's the kind of mindset you have, you're never gonna get to affordable housing. You know what I mean? Unless you're-
Power concedes
yeah,
nothing without a
exactly.
demand.
And unless we're pushing for things like free housing, then you're not
Push
gonna get affordable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like you have to go there to get anything. So it's like why start at a
Whoa.
position of weakness? Like can we just can you just help pay for Cobra premium plans for the
Right.
year or something? It's like
We-
no, we want healthcare for all people right now.
We
Like-
have the power, and this system is so good at making people, like alienating people from their own power.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to show people that they have power, and the way that we do that is through solidarity with other struggles, making sure that no one's left behind. Yeah, I'm fucking hopeful. I'm tired as shit. Like I feel like something's pressing on my neck at all times, but I refuse to die until we build better things, and that's a threat.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yes.
Very
yeah.
good.
But yeah, I think that kind of summarizes like everything we've talked about, just being basically the idea that like, yeah, these things are possible through, like you said, solidarity, through people recognizing other people's struggles and relating them to their own, and knowing that like we are, you know, all of these things affect all of us, and we have to have that solidarity to make, you know, any kind of progress.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. We have to thank generously Mirinda for coming on to our show.
Yeah,
you continue
thank
to
you.
teach me every conversation we have. I learned something new every single time. Please be sure to check out the description, because I'm going to list every single link that we mentioned, come hell or high water, in the video description in this episode, because all of this sounds fucking awesome.
Like, thank you so much.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thank y'all for
being
having
on.
me.
Yeah.
Any freaking time. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you so much.
we
No,
got-
literally any time.
Yeah,
Like, we should continue to build.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yes.
saying.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
And I mean, I would love to have. I mean,
Can we do the Elon
only
thing?
half joking. Yeah, I would love to do the.
Would
It's
you be
not a
down?
joke. We should do it.
Okay.
Dude, they are so serious.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let's do
Okay.
it.
I will write my material ahead of time.
Yes, I'm putting in the notes as we speak. Elon episode with Mirinda. So at this point, there's no going back.
It's gonna be awesome.
I have a personal vendetta.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.